Hey, all you folks, and welcome to Kelly's Chronicles, my channel where I sit down with people who are living everyday lives and listen to their extraordinary stories hidden behind normal, quiet existences. Because here we believe those lives are the most important and need to be remembered and acknowledged and heard and celebrated to not be forgotten by the passage of time. Hope you all had a wonderful week. And we had a great week over here. It's been a little bit cold, but pretty sunny here in the beautiful state of Alabama. We had some visitors this weekend. That was a lot of fun. We went out and karaoke and sang and did a little bit of shopping. So it was great. How has your week been, Dad?
Very good. We've had really good weather here. As a matter of fact, today is 47, which is
Ooh.
unbelievable for the Northern Rockies in January. So had that going on, and we just been doing our regular thing. Been going to working with the church. But yeah, it was a pretty busy there, and we got going down into Pokey. It's always an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And going to the various stores and partaking of restaurant fare and yeah, so
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Did some extra church worship and did some extra temple worship and been eating some
right.
good food.
And we I've got a little bit more done on the back deck that I'm working on. I'm
Oh, that's good.
trying to get that kind of winterized back there so the
Okay.
snow doesn't pile up on the deck 10 feet deep like it did last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way things are going, and
Busy, busy.
Uh, yeah, and I'm just trying to moderate and stay healthy and stay off the ladders if I can. And we took down Christmas. We put everything into our new basement, and there's
Okay.
like 12 tubs of Christmas stuff in the basement. It's
Okay.
crazy. I mean, you open the door up and it's like Christmas, yay! Yeah, uh,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
I'm glad you guys had a good week.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Things are kinda slow up here. We don't have a lot of traffic or a lot of,
Hustle and bustle.
yeah, you
Not
don't
a
hear
lot of that.
sirens all the time and gunshots and everything. It's just kind of quiet, and,
Very quiet.
we like that. We like
It's
that, so
it's very quiet. We actually moved our camper. We were living in an RV park and we moved our camper this week to a private lot out here more in the country of Arab. So it's very quiet out here. Very quiet. We're surrounded by all farm and no traffic. Can't hear the road. You just hear, your typical country road traffic going by, but it's a wooded lot. It's very nice. We're enjoying it. I put out a bird feeder today. I hope the birds like
okay.
it. I'm waiting for them
Yeah.
to come and eat from my bird feeder. I'm very anxious about it. I
You just be patient, they'll find it.
I
Don't worry,
know,
they'll find
but
it.
I'm like a cat sitting in the window waiting for the birds, like I'm like, "Where are they?" It's I'm just sitting
Yeah,
there
yeah.
anxiously awaiting my birds to eat from my feeder that I put out.
Yeah, maybe if you're watching them like a cat, that's probably why they're not coming around.
They can't see me. They can't see me. I'm behind the windows. I'm not
Yeah,
outside watching them. No, I'm actually inside,
okay.
watching far away in my camper windows, just hoping that they'll think my feeders are cool enough for them to eat from. We'll have to see. But I do love the birds around here. They're very beautiful, very colorful down here in Alabama. So, but that's something fun I did this week was move the camper. It's quite a task. We're still in Wisconsin, so we wanted to tell some more fun stories. Dad actually thought of a couple of really good ones that I wrote down so that we wouldn't forget about them. So I do have my little list in front of me. And we're just going to be going over a couple of stories. So it's going to be fun this podcast. So I was thinking we would start with the corn festival that you were telling me about, Dad, and we could start with that story.
Okay, in late summer, early fall, the sweet corn would come, ripen up and there was a little town called Sun Prairie, which is just right there by Madison, and they would have a corn festival every year, and
Okay.
fill up they would fill up stock tanks full of corn, and they would have a fire going up underneath it, and had it kind of on a raised platform, fire going underneath it, kept the water hot, kept the corn hot, and they had they had these tables set up around the stock tanks, and you go over there, and they would pull they had a set of tongs, and they would pull the corn out because they didn't want somebody burning themselves. So they would
Yeah.
pull the corn out and set it on a plate on the table, and then you would go pick out your corn. And they had uh, vats of butter, probably 1 gallon vats of butter, melted
Wow.
butter. And they had paintbrushes hanging on strings, and you go over and take the paintbrush and dip it in the butter and butter up your corn, and had big salt shakers, and then they had picnic tables set up, and you could go sit at the picnic table and have your sweet corn. And then they had rides and everything, and the normal, like a small carnival. But it was always fun to go over there and get that sweet corn. Was so good. It
Yeah.
was just like, I mean, the sweetest corn you've ever eaten. I'm
That's
drooling
awesome.
here. And
The memory of the
we would go
corn.
there.
That's
Yeah, and
awesome.
another thing that I think I mentioned was Devil's Lake. Well, Devil's Lake was this huge glacial lake up in central Wisconsin,
Uh-huh.
and near Baraboo, and it was, I don't know how it worked, how this happened, but on each side of the lake, there was a mountain of boulders. I'm talking probably the height of a 4 or 5-story building, and
Mm,
these were boulders from the size. Some of them were, of course, small, but most of them were about the size of a Volkswagen, and there was just thousands of them stacked up on. I don't know how they got there, but they was stacked up on each side of this lake, and you could go. You talk about bouldering. You could boulder there, and there
yeah.
was hundreds and hundreds of these huge boulders. And
Do you think the glacier pushed them? Because I 'Cause I've
I don't
heard of
know.
that.
I don't know why, but why did they end up there stacked up on each side of this lake? It
Yeah,
was
that's
amazing.
wild.
And the lake was crystal clear. You could go out there in a boat and you could see lake trout 200 feet down.
That's
It was
wild.
amazing place. I'm sure now it's like this massive tourist attraction, but back in the '60s, it was just, pretty much
Quiet.
they had a Devil's Lake State Park there. I think talked about the ice fishing, and
You
did I
did.
get into that about
Yeah, you
camping
did.
out
Was
in the
that
winter
one of the
camp?
lakes that you would go ice fishing on, was Devil's Lake?
Right. Well, now I didn't go, but there were ice fishermen on the lake. But I don't know if talked about when I was in Air Explorers, we camped out on the lake
You
in the
did.
winter,
You
20 below
did, and it was,
0.
wasn't it the one
Right.
where you guys were up there hooting and hollering and
Yep. That's it.
everybody
That's the
everybody
same place. Oh, yeah.
and
Crazy
you're,
kid.
Mr.
You
Bird.
crazy kid. Yeah. That was great. That was,
Yeah.
one of my good memories from, Wisconsin. And,
You have to
oh,
be rowdy as a boy growing up.
that's
That's just
right.
life. That's just life.
Especially when you're camping out, you can be rowdy camping out.
That's right.
When I was
That's
tell
right.
and kind of a sad thing that I mentioned earlier was, East Side High School was this huge 5-story, 2 blocks full of a building, huge,
Yeah.
campus, and 5,000 kids in it, and there was 3 small, we call them convenience stores now,
Mhm.
that surrounded the campus. One on the north and south side, and then one across the street. And there's a 4-lane highway, and there was one across the street. And kids would cross the street at lunchtime or before school and go to that. It was called the Pergold because the school
Mm,
colors are purple and gold, so they call it the
okay.
Pergold. And everybody wanted to go to the Pergold. And one day, a group of youngsters, about 7 or 8 kids, decided they were going to go over the pergola and cross this 4 lane. And they got about almost to the other side, and the group got hit by a car going about 45, 50 miles an hour, and it killed 4 of
Mm,
them and injured 3. And
gosh.
it was the town was devastated.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That was a real tragedy, and they put up a chain link fence down the middle of the road the next day. I think that would
Yeah.
keep the kids from crossing. They had to go to the cross because there was a crosswalk on each,
Mhm.
I think on each end of the school. There was a
Did you
stoplight and a crosswalk because you're talking a long building, and
Yeah.
they didn't want to go to the stop crosswalk. They wanted to cross in the middle of the street. So,
Did you know any of the kids that got hit? Or I mean, it was a
no,
big
this was this was
school.
this was in the '80s or '90s, I believe. It was long
Oh,
after
okay.
20 years after I'd left, but it was, because I did go back to East Side. I went back, and they had the chain link fence up, and I recognized the school is still active. It's still
Yeah.
a very, big part of the community still.
Mhm.
A lot of the kids right down the street from the high school, but, probably about 4 blocks down, there's a huge railback factory. So all your railback batteries, I'm not sure they're made there, probably made in China now, but back then, the railback company had this huge factory, and that provided jobs for probably 90% of the community. Your
Wow.
dad worked at railback, and, they had lots of smaller homes. It was a blue collar neighborhood, and,
Mm.
to have those kids killed was tragic because there was no crime there at all that I knew of. No, you could
Yeah, back in the day, it was
Yep.
quiet.
Now Central High School, on the other hand, that was a pretty tough neighborhood over there. Lots of apartments and transient,
Mm.
stuff like that. And, yeah, there was murders over there, and there was lots of crime, but poor old East Side, no, it was quiet, just blue collar neighborhood and a real tragedy. Anyway, getting off of that,
Mm.
uh
In basically bridging from the snack bar, you had a dairy bar that you were gonna
oh,
talk
yeah.
about.
Okay, yeah. Over pretty close to the air base, on the main drag on Washington Boulevard, there was a dairy bar.
Yeah.
And, it was what how this worked was a dairy farm, a local dairy farm, and maybe more than one had bought a storefront and opened up a dairy bar. It had, I mean, cheese and milkshakes and milk and, uh, butter, you name it, butter,
Yep.
everything. But it was all just manufactured right there in Wisconsin. Matter of fact, probably on the dairy farm and brought into town, and it was incredible. I would go in there with a dollar. This is in the
And
early '60s. I'd go in there with a dollar to
yeah.
get this, like, gallon-sized chocolate milkshake. I know it wasn't a gallon, but it was a good quart. It was a quart
That's a
milkshake
lot of
for
milkshake.
99 cents, and it was so good. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of cattle or the dairy cows they had, probably
Mhm.
Guernseys or Holsteins
The best
or,
kind.
I don't know, but it had so much butter fat in it, and it was so good. Ugh, I mean, and you just don't see that anywhere, I think, except in Wisconsin,
You
where
don't
a
Wisconsin.
dairy opened up a store. Now, there was one in Ohio that we used to stop off of Interstate 70, and near Columbus, Ohio, and we used to stop in there, but that's the only other one I've ever seen anywhere. And they had their own livestock in Ohio, and the
Yeah.
one in Wisconsin also had their own dairy cattle, and so it was, straight from the farm, and it
Yeah.
was,
I tell you
I mean,
what,
one of my cherished memories was going into a Wisconsin dairy bar. Wow.
that's awesome. Yeah, they don't have
Uh,
I don't know if they have those really anymore. I don't think that's really but
no,
they still have very good I mean, the dairy up there is still world class.
yep,
Some of the best
yep.
stuff. I mean,
Absolutely,
we
absolutely pristine. The dairy farms, that's
oh,
one thing you'll notice. The dairy farms in Wisconsin, everything is painted, it's neat, it's clean, there's not a bunch of junk around. Most of the dairy runs
very good
are
care
run
of
by Germans or Dutch,
mhm,
and they are meticulous. The German-Dutch mindset is just, everything's in its place and
clean.
a place for everything. I
Yeah.
think they even, I don't know, that maybe even their cows are cataloged and have their own stall, you know? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Each one has a name.
They're just beautiful, beautiful, farms. There anybody ever wants to go see a good American farm, Wisconsin's got
Uh,
'em, lots of them.
sure do.
And, yeah,
They
we
sure
would
do. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess I said maybe I mentioned this before that my family, I have roots in Wisconsin. I mean, my dad was stationed there,
Mhm.
but my family on my grandmother's side, they were uh, they were in South Central Wisconsin back in the
Okay.
1800s, pre-Civil War and during. Matter of fact, I had a relative, a shirt tail relative, would be the son of my great grandfather from another woman, not directly blood. I guess it'd be blood
Okay.
kin because they had the same father but a different mother. And he was killed in the Civil War, and
Oh, wow.
part of the Iron Brigade that came out of Wisconsin, mainly German American, who formed a brigade, which is two or more battalions
Mm.
of 1,000 men each. So a couple of thousand men that went down and engaged the Confederacy. My cousin, or my, I guess he'd be a step granduncle or
Yeah.
something in the Civil War, and his father was a Methodist circuit rider,
Hmm.
and he had several churches in South Central Wisconsin, Methodist churches, and he would uh, ride a horse, probably his Bibles in a sack and a
Yeah.
saddlebag, and ride to these different churches and preach the gospel. And that was Robert
I didn't know
Robotham.
that.
Yeah,
I didn't know
my
that we
great
had a Methodist minister in the family. That's
right, and
really cool.
he's my great great grandfather.
Great-great-grandfather. Okay.
Yep,
Very
and
interesting. Now
yep.
the relative that died in the Civil War, how did they die? Did they die in battle, or did they die from sickness, or how did
He
they
did
die?
not he died of wounds or a disease. He wasn't killed in action, but
Huh.
he died, and he died of all places in Pocahontas, Arkansas.
That's very random.
I don't even I don't even know if he may even be buried there because a lot of the soldiers were not returned to their families.
They just
They
buried
were
where they
buried
fell.
where they fell, and if you were, died of
Huh.
disease or wounds, they normally just would bury you either at the hospital or just in a little local cemetery. And I haven't went there to see if he was in that local cemetery, but yeah, uh, that's where he died.
Where he died. That's really interesting. We're just about ready to get into Arkansas with your mom and dad moving you all down there. I think that's really interesting how we had a relative that was in Arkansas that died there. And we never
Yeah,
did yeah,
and
we never went to Pocahontas to see if
yeah, and
they were buried
one
there.
side aside of Robert Robotham, the preacher, is uh, he got involved. There was a young lady who had a baby out of wedlock, and that was this was like back in the day when that was unheard of. You just didn't. He backed her. He said that you shouldn't be judgmental. We don't know everything that went on, and we shouldn't be judgmental of her having this child out of wedlock, and they ran him out of town. And I think that was Prairie du Sac, which is one of the towns that he was a circuit rider. He lived in Black Earth, Wisconsin, but I
Okay.
think Prairie du Sac ran him out of town and said, "How dare you?" You
How
know?
dare you? Get out of here.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of some interesting relatives that we've had, I actually completely forgot about a story that we have in the family about one of our relatives being in the battle up in Montana. He died there and he's actually on the monument.
Yep. That was Thomas Bucknell. Thomas
Yeah.
Bucknell was a scout for General Custer, and he'd served with Custer, and then been discharged. He went back to Ohio, and he was from Cincinnati. He went back to Ohio and hung around for a while and said, "Oh, I'm not making any money here. So I'm going to go So he reenlisted in the 7th Cavalry about 2 months later, the Battle of Little Bighorn. And he was a scout, like I said, and probably was one of the first to contact the Indians because they sent the scouts out, of course, ahead of the main body to check out what was going on. So he may have been, but he was killed, and his name is on the paperwork and all the monuments. Thomas Bucknell is one of the casualties of the war.
Yeah. That was kinda
And
crazy, really interesting that he's on the monument.
yep,
And I've actually looked up a picture of the monument because I wanted to know for myself, and there he is.
there he
He's
is.
on
Yep,
there.
old Tommy.
Yep.
Tommy unlucky. He should have stayed in Ohio. That's
He should have stayed in Ohio. Poor
yeah, he
guy,
should have
now
stayed
he's
in
on a
Ohio.
monument.
Should have stayed there and worked a farm or something. And if he could
Yeah.
be Mister, be a Westerner, be an adventurer, go out with
The
Custer
adventure.
and
Well,
yeah, kill those
our
Indians.
family
That didn't work. Didn't work.
our
They killed you.
family yep, our family definitely has a very long history of being adventurers and travelers and wanting to see the world. So,
Yep.
sometimes that gets us into trouble for some of us.
Every Nearly every time.
I've definitely had my fair share of troubles out on my travels, but most of the time it was pretty quiet.
All of my relatives either came to this country after the Civil War, or if
Okay,
they were here during the Civil War, they were up in Wisconsin or some other place and
correct.
didn't get involved, although one did. Most of them were in Nebraska, even
Yeah.
though that branch of the family, the Germans, most of them uh, came in the 1880s. My great grandfather Olson, he came here in 1886.
Mhm.
So the whole Olson branch was not here. They were
Right,
in
during
they were they were in Sweden
mhm.
and doing Swedish things,
The
having
Swedish gotcha.
yeah, and then the Germans they came. That would be my mother's side. The Germans there they came earlier than the Civil War in some cases, but mainly after the Civil War. Europe was a I mean, the Europeans were constantly fighting. I don't know why
Word.
they absolutely hated each other, and they were constantly fighting. And even in what you would consider a country like Germany wasn't even united as a country till like 1870. Before that, it was city states, and they fought each other. I mean, for maybe a plot of land somewhere, they were just and if you were
Always arguing.
British or if you were British, you hated the French and you hated the Germans, and the Germans hated, it was just
Back and forth.
crazy, incredible,
Yeah.
and it started even before history and even the earliest history, like the Roman Empire. That's what they were doing, run around killing each other and conquering territory. It was unbelievable. You read European history, and it's just
It's
mind-boggling
amazing.
the amount of people that were butchered in wars for nothing.
Yeah. Oh,
Just
territory
just
and
yeah,
land.
you just read about it, you go, "Oh, well, what was that? Oh, that was a religious war." And then you read it, oh, that was a war for territory. Oh, that was just a war because they didn't like each other. My relatives, especially the Germans, they fled there to get away from all this turmoil. It
It was
was
wild.
crazy.
There was a lot of turmoil, with Germany into the '90s with the Berlin Wall. Not the
Right.
'90s, but the late '80s,
No, it
uh,
was 90s.
19
Yeah, Berlin
1990?
Wall came down in 1990, I think.
Was it 1990?
So
I think
that
so.
united Germany again. It was East
Mhm.
Germany and West Germany, and that the Berlin Wall separated them. Uh, Actually, it wasn't just the Berlin Wall; it was fortifications, an entire border between East and West Germany.
Yeah.
So that united them as a country again. But the Berlin Wall was
Mhm.
the most glaring example of the separation between the two Germanys, and they didn't. They were it was a political thing there. So they were all German, but there was a the East Germans were communist and the West Germans were democratic, and
Yeah.
so there was a
Well, it
political. And that
stayed
was
it well, it stayed up until the USSR collapsed. Well, it was starting to collapse. It was in the
right.
beginning stages of
Yeah.
it, and we
Well,
remember
yeah,
when it did
Eastern Europe
finally.
was breaking away. Poland was first, broke
Mhm.
away, and then Czechoslovakia and Hungary and all the the Eastern Bloc, the what they call the Warsaw Pact countries, Eastern Europe broke away one at a time from the Soviet Union, and then the Soviet Union
Yep.
went down the tubes.
I remember when it finally did go down because we were actually in Alaska when that happened. And I have a
Hmm.
very vivid memory of you coming home and saying Russia's collapsed. And they're finally able to come over and
Right.
trade and visit. So you went in the bedroom, you got all your jeans, all your Walkmans, all the books that you could spare,
Yep.
got I can't remember what else. You got some money too, just to have fun with trade, and you took
Yep.
me, and you dragged me along with you, which was awesome because I still have the most distinct memories of that moment when we stepped onto that Russian ship. They had brought a Russian ship, a submarine, and a plane.
I think, well, it was two that I remember. There was an icebreaker
Mhm.
and a training
That
ship,
was
and I think the one that you remember is probably the training ship, and it was full of
probably
young men. They were
yes,
all,
very young.
just joined the Navy, Russian Navy, and
Yep.
they were on one of their first voyages as a Russian Navy ship, not a Soviet ship. They gave the things that I traded for were Soviet things,
Mhm.
because I knew the Soviet Union was gone, so that's where the
That's
value
what you
was, not
wanted.
so much in the
Yes.
Russian stuff, but the Soviet Union stuff. So I have, like, hammer and sickles on hats and flags and
You
all
got
this,
all kinds
and
of
they were glad to get rid of it because they weren't part of the Soviet
yeah.
Union anymore. So they were, anxious to trade that stuff off because it was now worthless. They couldn't even they couldn't fly the flags or wear the hats. They were
And
now Russian.
that's still something that you have in your treasures, is you still have those items that you treasure. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
have a few coins that I got from that trade, but I've
Yeah,
treasured them all these years, and I've just kept them because it's so incredible. They've got the hammer and sickle on the back. How rare it is for someone in America to have those items,
yeah.
and we really got lucky. And you were smart. I mean, you took a box of stuff. I remember, and you put that box down, and you just started. I've got this. And these guys were so excited to trade because they didn't have any of that stuff. so
Yep.
it was a really fun experience for someone like myself being 7. I remember every minute of that moment. It was so much fun. It's a really cool experience for me. We'll probably talk about that later on in some future
Yeah,
podcasts.
yeah, well,
We're still in
when we get into
Wisconsin, you know?
Alaska again, going
Yeah,
back
we'll
to
go back to
Alaska.
Alaska. Yeah, because 'cause we're
Yep.
gonna go back there eventually, but and that was definitely a fun little memory I wanted to add in there. So, but we'll go back. Let's head back to Wisconsin now. So get out of Alaska here. So now you had mentioned that you and the Air Explorers were able to take a ride on an Air Force
Yep.
plane.
The 327th, and it's a 320. I think that's one time I said 326. It's actually the 327th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. They
Mhm.
didn't have a whole lot of cargo planes, but the Air National Guard had cargo planes stationed on the base.
Oh,
And so
okay.
they made a deal that they want could take us up in this in a they call a C it's a C-119 flying boxcar, and it's a very unusual aircraft. Has a twin tail, like two tail booms sticking back, and then right
Mhm.
in the rear of the fuselage opens up like a clamshell or something. It opens
Oh,
like
okay.
this big pod, so they
Yeah.
would open that up, and then they had ramps, and you'd walk up the ramps, and then they had troop seats in there, and that we got up in there, and we took off, and we flew. I think we made a round trip to Milwaukee, which is about 150 miles each way, and that was just really a super experience for us boys.
Yeah, I
You know
bet.
that yeah, they primed us. I'll tell you, yeah, we're all wanting to join the Air Force after that.
Yeah.
And I think,
I'm gonna join the Air
yeah,
Force. And all of them were like they're like,
yeah,
"Yep, future officers right here in this plane.
yeah, and
Future soldiers."
it was exciting and very loud though. Those
Yeah.
planes, they're of course they're just for troops and cargo. They're not really what you call a passenger plane. So there was no insulation in the walls at all. And it was a twin engine, just real, not jets. These are prop planes, and it was loud. You had to scream at each other to be heard. And but it was really exciting. I thought of something else too while I was
Yeah,
talking. There was a town called Stoughton, which was
okay.
south of Madison, and it was the neighbors or the surrounding land was all Norwegians. The Norwegians were there big time, and they would have this festival every year celebrating their Norwegian heritage. And they would have
Okay.
parades and floats and marching bands, and it was incredible. We would go down there every year to the Norwegian festival and watch the parades. It was a unique thing that you wouldn't see anywhere else because they would wear their Norwegian outfits. They would dance in the streets in these Norwegian outfits. And it was just really I mean, culturally, it was really neat, and it kind of tied in with our heritage of being Swedish.
Mhm.
So a lot of the costumes and a lot of the music and everything was like
Very similar.
Swedish Norwegian or Norwegian Swede or whatever,
Mhm.
because they were all one big country at one time. All
Yeah,
of
all
Scandinavia
Scandinavian.
was one big country, and so there was a lot of overlap. So it was kind of like and even though it was Norwegian, it was a Swedish festival, and
Mm,
they did have Swedish festivals then up there, but we never went to them. I don't know if they were
mm,
too far away or what, or maybe
yeah,
Dad was in denial of his Swedish heritage. I don't know. We didn't go to a Swedish town until uh, we were in Arkansas. We went up to Lindsborg up
that's
by
right.
Salina, Kansas, and got involved in Swedish heritage up there, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you remember that,
I
don't you, Kelly?
do. I
Yeah,
do. We went for the
Lindsborg.
Oktoberfest. Or
Yeah, that
it
was
was the fall
awesome.
festival. It's
That
very
was
cool, very
that
cool.
was pretty neat going up there
It was.
and basking in our Swedishness.
It was so much fun. Everybody was blonde, and I fit in. And I'm sure everyone had the last name
Yeah,
Olsen or Larson,
all those sons.
yeah, all the sons. So yeah, it was wonderful. We were introduced to the Dala horse, which I had no idea about the legend of the Dala horse before that.
Yeah,
We just embraced it and it was a wonderful experience. It was a lot of fun.
yeah,
I think I was probably about 15 or 16 when we went to that.
yeah. That was
was a good time.
yeah, Wisconsin was, I felt at home in Wisconsin
Yeah.
because that of the German and Swedish heritage that was there, and lots of the well, I told the story of my homeroom when I was
Yeah.
a yeah,
Everyone had the last name
sophomore.
Olsen.
Yeah, it was everybody was old, and
Everybody's Olsen.
I got out my annual and looked up. It was like homeroom. The homerooms were by the number of the the room. I was in
Mhm.
homeroom 326, which is room 326. Yeah, there was like it's about half and half. I said all Olsen. It's about half and half, and it was still alphabetical.
Oh,
They,
that's
you know,
crazy.
they went they went down and they missed the seed. They missed they missed the chucks, and so
Just a bunch of Olsens.
yeah.
Man. Ah,
Yeah,
that's
it was
fun.
something. I was
That is
crazy kid, I'll tell you. But
yeah.
it was innocent fun. It was, and I'm telling you, right, I'll sit here right here and tell you there were no drugs and back in
Yeah.
early, and I'm not sure about, Chicago or New York City, but in Madison, Wisconsin, there were no drugs at all and very little alcohol abuse that I ever heard about. So all of the fun that we had and all the activities were good,
Good,
clean,
clean.
clean meaning you weren't getting drunk, you weren't doing drugs, and and sex was out of the question. It was just you could go to like there was a teen club on the base on the Air Force base. There was
Oh,
a teen
wow.
club there, and I would go to the dances over there, and
Oh,
we'd do the twist and the pony and the chicken and
you
everything, all these crazy dances they had back then,
you
and,
told me you went to dances.
oh, yeah, well,
Oh. Did you get all dressed
yeah,
up in your best
yeah,
studs?
yeah, jeans and a T-shirt, I think. No, it was probably a button. I don't think it allowed the people didn't wear T-shirts back in those days. They wore button shirts, button-up
Mhm.
shirts, and in high school, you couldn't have patch pockets on your jeans or your pants. You had to have
Okay.
slack. Had to wear slacks basically,
Oh, okay.
and the women all wore dresses. There was
Right.
no the girls didn't wear pants back in those days. So it was a different I'm telling you, it was a different world.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin was the heart of that culture. Upper Midwest, Michigan was back then was the manufacturing capital of the United States, making millions of cars every year.
Yeah.
Very wealthy area. Chicago was booming, had lots of stockyards there with cattle, processing cattle and pigs. And then right below that was Calumet and Gary, which was big steel mills. And so Wisconsin was, and all Wisconsin, the western side of Lake Michigan was a manufacturing hub in Kenosha and Milwaukee, and all of those cities on the western shore of Lake Michigan were industrialized. Lots of appliance manufacturing, small appliances and large appliances, tools, all that was right
Oh,
there. That was the that area of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, again, Wisconsin. That was the manufacturing hub of America. Lots of money, lots of factories of various kinds. Now that's all gone pretty much.
mhm.
And so but that back then, that was incredible, incredible American dream of
Yeah, right
people.
there in the Midwest.
You could buy a car for a couple $1,000, brand new car for a couple $1,000. The average income of an American was about 3 or 4 thousand. So, a couple of years, every year, a couple of years, you could buy a brand new car. Houses were like $5,000 for a nice brick 3 bedroom, 1 bath home. It just, people were living the American dream,
Yeah,
and, it's gone. There's no place in America where that, uh,
that
exists
exists
anymore.
anymore.
It
No, absolutely
everything
not.
is
No,
everything is
very
extremely expensive,
expensive.
way out of the reach of the average American.
Yeah,
Cars are ridiculously expensive. It's not there anymore. Unfortunately, we just have to, just accept what we've got. I mean, there's nothing to really do about it because it's
no,
not just America, it's worldwide. It's just this, economy, uh, where it's a transnational economy where everything's made in a foreign country, and not everything, but nearly everything
not
made in a
everything.
foreign
Yeah,
country, and it's all containerized and brought into the country, and it's just a
it's a
crazy world
totally different world from when
thing,
you
and
remember it.
America as we once knew it, that my generation, uh, knew, the boomers
Mhm.
the boomers, benefited vastly from World War II, post World War II economy in America. The 50s in America were incredible. They were incredible. It was like I could get on my bicycle, and this is not just this is any place in America practically. A kid could get on his bicycle and he could ride 10, 15 miles out, see a friend, go to a movie, whatever, 10 or 15 miles back. Their parents never worried about him. Nobody ever, in my experience, you just didn't nobody bothered you. You were free, and
Oh,
to be a
yeah,
child in the '50s
and
was
to just do what you wanted
incredible,
to do.
incredible. Now you can't. I mean, there's kids that are snatched out of their front yards
Yep.
right in front of their parents practically, and all kinds of drugs, and there's all this turmoil with all this everything, they protest everything. You have these just two distinct cultures in America, the left wing culture and the right wing culture, and they don't like each other at all. And I'm not saying that there was politics back in the '50s, but it
Mhm.
wasn't that localized, and it was always like a just a small portion of America. Most Americans were happy with what they had, and they were glad to be here, and especially the veterans. They had been over in places that were devastated by the war, where people were starving to death. They came to America and they had a land of plenty. They had lots of food, lots of everything, and we were the leaders of the free world. And yeah, there was the Cold War with Russia, that or with Soviet Union, where you had threat of nuclear disaster and all this. But for the average kid, he didn't know about that.
No,
I
you
don't
didn't.
remember ever. I don't remember getting underneath my desk and during
Yeah.
all these war. No, not in Georgia and not in Wisconsin. I mean, no. The only thing
You
I
guys
the
didn't you
only thing
guys
I
didn't
saw.
practice, like, nuclear threats? You guys didn't
Right.
didn't practice that in school at all? Where you would, hide
Not
under the desk
no,
just in case
not
of a bomb?
really. No,
No?
I don't remember. We remember fire drills, but I don't remember ever any kinda, and we had a big Air Force base there, a big, big,
Yeah,
like,
I was
tell me
gonna
about that
say.
big Sage building, NORAD. That
Mhm.
was probably one of Russia's or Soviet Union is probably on their target map. We're gonna hit it right there. And as a matter of fact, you see that trailer over there with that Swedish kid? Put that one on the
Right here,
let's
yeah,
let's
that
hit
kid.
him with a missile. Yeah,
He's gonna kill a lot of, bad guys in the future. We gotta get rid of
yeah.
him.
So it was just, and the
Different
people,
time.
the non-boomers, the millennials and the Gen Zs and all the kids that came after will
Like
never
me.
and I probably in their lifetime, they will probably never know that freedom that we had in the '50s. It was
That was a totally different
just,
world back then.
unparalleled, probably in the history of the world, where you had that much, uh, material goods and that much freedom for children, where they could roam the world and nobody would ever bother. Nobody ever
Love it.
I had that one little tell you about that one little accident I had with a car hitting me, but that was just it was an accident. There
Yeah,
was just
exactly.
very, very little crime involving children. Just and like I said, the generations that came after your generation and the ones that are even younger than you will never know that. It's not safe anymore. The world has become a dangerous place for children. It was a wonderful, wonderful time.
That is a
And
life that only is only in the memory of people that are the same age as you.
yep, the
That is
boomers.
that is
Of
a
course, now
that is a
before
memory
World
and
War II, I'm sure going back, back to my father's time, the greatest generation, their childhood was probably similar.
very similar.
However, they had to live through the Great Depression,
Yeah, they had to work hard.
and that was 10 years of hell that America had to go through from 1929 to the 1940, the early 40s, when they finally started industrial production to because they saw the war was coming. We're doing
They
defense
started
industry, lots of airplanes and boats and everything,
they were
and
getting ready for it.
getting ready for war. The Europeans, they were again at war.
Yeah.
And,
It
the
was a
Germans
war.
and the British were killing each other again. They had
Uh,
20 years, World War One, had all that butchery, and then they had 20 years to rebuild their population so they would have enough young men to go die. But, they had to wait at least 20 years to build up
Crazy.
that population, have enough young men to go die. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it is
It's
crazy.
Europe is a crazy, crazy place, and it's still crazy. Now they're having to deal with the Muslims, and
Mhm.
that's really
Pretty
I'm
much.
not sure how that's going to end. They may end in a war there.
If you want
They're
my theory,
yeah,
you
they're
want my
not
theory,
popular. Just saw a
no.
thing on Denmark how they're throwing them out of Denmark,
Well, they
and
have to.
they don't want them here anymore. And they're
Well,
breaking up their family unit, their cohesiveness and their surreal law and all that. They're breaking that up and segregating them and putting them in different enclaves and trying to keep them from getting together. Yeah,
yeah,
and so
it
they're still
is
having
wild.
they're
That's definitely
they're
some
still
heavy
at it.
right there is anything
They're
about that.
still at it. Gosh.
I know they are. I know, it's crazy. So, I have this book that I've been working on. It's a question book. I actually have it right here. And I've actually been filling it out myself. And so when you tell me
Your
stories,
story dad.
I write them down for you as if you were writing the book. So
Okay.
I go through and I pick out certain either I can fill it out because you've already told me the story, or I find a couple of questions and I'm like, ooh. And I had forgotten about the book until we finally got all settled down, here in the camper. So I found it again. I was like,
Okay.
I found the book, and I have to dive into the questions again, and I have one for mom as well. So, one of a couple of the questions that I found were really, really good questions. So I figured I would ask you a couple questions, and you could talk about those. So,
Okay.
one of the questions that I had found was, if you could go back and relive a day in your childhood, what would it be? Which day?
One event or one time
It
ban?
could be, you know what? We'll mix it up a little bit and we'll say it could be either one. It could be a time or it could be an event, whichever one you would prefer.
Well, I think an event that I cherish and would like to of my childhood would be spending time with my grandmother in
Yeah.
Burlington, Colorado. That was just that was my parents divorced when I was 2, and my grandmother basically raised me for the first, like, 3 or 4 years of my life. So
Yeah.
she was my mom, and, to go back there and fortunately, my dad was a mama's boy. He loved to be with his mother, and he loved
Oh,
to
yeah.
go back to Burlington, and so that just worked in my advantage, and I go back there, and I can remember 2 things that really stand out. One was there were my grandmother's house had along the one road there, there was about 5 gigantic mulberry trees, and I loved mulberries. And so when we would go there in the summertime and the mulberries would be in full prolific or
Yeah.
grandeur, I would eat mulberries all day long. I would grab a limb, pull it down, and stuff my face with mulberries, and loved that. And the other thing was in the summertime, there would be these locusts that would come in. They were called Arkansas travelers, or they were just huge grasshoppers, about 4 or 5 inches long, and there was millions of them. And I always had a BB gun. I'd go out and shoot these locusts by the hundred all day long. I would hunt locusts, and it's just it's a sweet memory
Yeah.
of being where a place where I felt at home because my grandmother, I was the oldest grandchild, and my grandmother just fawned on me. She'd take me everywhere, show me off, and I could go into there was a grocery store in downtown Burlington, and I could walk in that grocery store, and everybody she met, she knew everybody
Yeah.
because she lived there. She lived there her whole practically her whole life, and she knew everybody. And she'd say, "This is my grandson, Skippy, and he isn't he?" And they come and they go, "Oh, isn't he? Oh, little Skippy, he's so cute." Yeah, yeah.
That
And
is
it was amazing. It was like, I was the star of the show, and
I love
we would
that.
go to the grocery store, go to the bank, wherever she had business, and everywhere she would go, she knew everybody and would show me off, and I loved it. I loved my grandmother. I loved Burlington, and I would have if there was a different whatever, I probably would have ended up living there,
Mhm.
but yeah, it wasn't meant to be. I became a nomad with no home except
Yeah.
for the memories of Burlington,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
that is my home, really. I could go there.
Yeah.
There was no relatives except my grandparents that I knew of, but,
Yeah.
yeah, all those old timers, they're all gone. That whole generation is gone,
Yeah,
but
they really
yeah,
are.
that sweet memory of
Yeah, I love
being
that.
around with my grandmother. Wow, cool. Yeah, great memory.
That's
We'd be
awesome
there for Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, in the summer. Anytime dad had a little leave, he'd head for Burlington,
right there.
and, that was
That's
great,
good. That
and,
that really, shows how much he treasured his parents in many ways. That he picked
yep,
anything he could have picked anything, but he picked mom and dad. I love
yep.
that. I love that. Such a sweet memory. Thank you for sharing that. One of the other questions I found was if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
My younger self,
Your younger self.
I would say to save and invest,
Ah, yes.
and just, if you just you didn't have to do you didn't be a genius to put, like, $100 a month or whatever into the stock market, and you're gonna be rich. I'll be 79 here in a week, and, I'm looking
Yeah,
back,
you will
you
be.
know That's right, next Saturday, and
79.
I'm looking back over 79 years of life, but at least 55 or 60 years of earning wages
Mhm.
and not investing, and
Yeah.
I'm going, "What a freaking idiot."
You aren't an idiot. You just didn't know. Don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, yeah,
That's why we call it
my
advice.
folks, they went through the Great Depression, so they were savers and very
Mhm.
frugal in every aspect of their lives, and I never have been. I've always been not I wouldn't say a spendthrift, but definitely a non investor in America. I mean, even if I'd bought savings bonds or anything, I mean, just anything.
Anything.
Everything has went everything's went up.
Yeah.
Everything has went up, and
Anything. Well,
yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy.
So,
And
okay, so
Yeah,
I
that would be my advice.
I love
Yeah,
that. That's really great. It's good advice for everyone listening. Save and invest, everybody. It's important. So the last question that I found that I really liked, and I thought, ooh, that's a good one. What was the most difficult decision you had to make as a teenager, and how do you feel about that decision today?
difficult decision.
Mhm. A
Hmm,
difficult decision that you had to
maybe
make.
joining the military.
Yeah,
I joined the military I joined the Army when I was 17.
that's a
My
big
folks had to
decision.
sign for me to join the National Guard, and my 8 so I was 17, and then I turned 18 in, like, a month later, maybe 6 weeks later, I turned 18, and my senior trip when I graduated from high school, my senior trip was to Fort Polk, Louisiana for military Army infantry training. It served me well. It saved my life, and
Mhm.
if I would have not had that training in the Army, I probably would have been making stupid mistakes when I was out with the Marine infantry.
Yeah.
I never did any exercise in Vietnam with the Army, but I went with the Marines numerous times, and I knew
They
how to
saved
keep
your
my head
life.
down, and knew about small unit tactics and everything that was taught
Mhm.
in the Army. And a lot of my peers that were in my unit uh, were killed
Mm.
because they had no training. They had none. As a matter of fact, after they were dead, then they decided to start training the beach jumpers.
Oh,
Little late,
huh.
guys.
A little late for
Yeah,
that, huh?
yeah.
Jeez.
But I knew I from my army basic training, army artillery school. I knew how to stay alive, and that was
Yeah.
I would say by difficult, I would say was
That,
anything that had long range consequence and not necessarily difficult as in
like,
something that would be
challenging.
detrimental.
Yeah.
It was advantageously difficult, but it was still when you sign that paper and you know that you've given up 6 years of your life. You've only
And
been
you're also
alive
making
for
a really
that's
grown-up
one
decision.
third. That's one third of your life. That you're,
Yeah, that's
signing off on, uh, for a dubious
big chunk.
reward. Yeah, but I felt yeah, and then Vietnam was just cranking up, and I knew I'd be
Mm.
drafted,
They
my
drafted a
class of
lot of men.
275 people in my high school graduating class, 80 of the men were drafted, and so I said, "Yep,
Yeah.
yeah."
See, you knew you would get drafted. Knew.
Yeah, I
You
knew
had
it.
that
Vietnam was
you had
cranking
that
up,
feeling.
it was coming, so I said, "Well, if I join the National Guard," and dad pulled some strings.
Mm.
He called some people and made it possible for me to get into that. That was
But I
142nd
think,
Field Artillery, that I got into, the Army National Guard. Yeah.
that probably saved your life in a lot of ways, and
Oh, yeah.
looking back on that decision, how you feel about it today, I would say that it because you went in early without fighting it and without like, you went in head first. You
Yep.
just dove right in. That, in many ways, saved you because you knew you had to train and you knew that you had to be ready.
And
You learned.
as a result of that, I survived
Mhm.
to have my children, you
Yes. Hey,
and
I'm the children.
your siblings, and
Yep,
I think
and all my siblings.
that's just you're an amazing group of people. I
Yeah.
love my children, and I
Uh,
think that they have had great lives. They're well educated. They're
mm,
sophisticated. They contribute to society in many ways, and they're honest and uh, just great citizens.
yeah.
Any
Thanks,
country
Dad.
would be proud to have my children, but you can't have them. 'Em. They're Americans.
That's
Sorry,
right.
darling.
We are Americans, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Dad. We're proud to be your kids, every single one of us. So we're happy and proud that you're our dad. So, well, we're out of time, so we wanted to tell one more story. How about you tell the story of the House of the Rocks?
Okay, there was in again in central Wisconsin, there are glacial formations. What it was is there was apparently a volcanic area in Wisconsin that sent up these pillars of lava, and
Mhm.
then the glaciers came through and cleaned out everything around them and left these pillars standing. And this architect or maybe a contractor
Mhm.
saw these pillars, came out. He was living in Milwaukee or Chicago or somewhere, and he came to Wisconsin. He saw these big pillars. He said, "Whoa, I think I'm going to build a house on top of it." So he goes up and he on top of these pillars, he builds this. I mean, immense house. This thing is probably, I don't know, 10, 15,000 square foot house on top of these pillars. And they have these cantilevered window things that you can walk out and you're like 100 feet off the ground and it's all
Wow.
glass. And then inside, everything is like made out of natural materials, like a lot of rock and a lot of copper and that sort of thing. And the one thing that I can really remember is there was a coffee table in the living room that was probably 6 feet long, maybe 7 feet long, and 3 or 4 feet wide. And inside, there's a glass top on it. And inside were two humongous reels. This is back in the day when they had reel to reel tape recorders, right? So they had
Yeah.
these two reels in there. Each one of them was probably 2 feet in diameter. It was two reels, and they had, of course, tape on them and it would probably played for I don't know a month, as as big as these
Dang.
reels were, and they were made out of brass. It
Wow.
was beautiful piece. I mean, I don't know who made it. I doubt that the contractor did. It's probably he probably had some factory somewhere that
Probably
did
an
this sort of
architect.
stuff and had it manufactured strictly for this coffee table. And I remember that's one thing I really, really remember. And I remember it being, a lot of little nooks and crannies and little closet spaces, and had like a little niche that he would stick a vase in. It was just a beautiful piece of construction, and really awe-inspiring that he had went up on top of these rocks and built his house.
Wow.
About a hundred, it's about 100,
Awesome.
it was about 100 feet in the air, something like that, I would say. Maybe a little more, a little less, but that's right at about 100 feet up on top of these rocks.
That's
And
awesome.
I somewhere I've got a brochure from the House on the Rock. So
It's
Wisconsin has got some really incredible stuff that
yeah.
Wisconsin Dells. There's another one. The Wisconsin River has got this one section they call the Dells, which again is these pillars of some kind of hard rock that the glaciers left there, and they're right in the middle of the river. And
Mhm.
there's this huge, like monolith, 70, 80 feet high and 100 feet across, right in the middle of the river. And it goes Wisconsin Dells. Just all kinds of that's if you ever go on
Mm.
vacation and you go, well, where am I going to go this year? Oh, I think I'm going to go to Wisconsin
Wisconsin
because they got
Dells.
all these cool things that
Yeah.
people they don't really know about that are just incredible natural wonders of Wisconsin. And they also have in Baraboo. Now, see the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus uh, was it had some connection to Wisconsin, and they have a museum in Baraboo of circus wagons and calliopes, which
Oh,
back
wow.
in the day of circus, when circus were the big top and all that, they had these wagons, beautiful carved wooden wagons where they have the tigers in there in a cage or something. And then they had the calliope, which was a steam organ, very
Mm.
loud. And they have a couple of them in there, and they'll play them for you. Go in there and and would you?
Oh,
And they'll
wow.
crank it up, and they'll crank it up and play the calliope for you. So
Oh, I
there's
didn't know
just
that.
so much cool stuff in
That's
that
cool.
state. It was just amazing. And being in the Air Explorers, yeah, I was able to see a lot of it that my parents
Definitely.
probably would not have went to.
Probably
They
not.
just weren't
So,
they just weren't they wanted to go back to Burlington.
yep, that's right.
Yeah,
Well,
so
that was a good story. Thank you for sharing that to finish out our podcast for this week. We're just to let everybody know, side note, we're going to be moving our podcast to Mondays because of the schedule that we have changing up here in my life. We've been kind
yeah.
of shifting some stuff around. So just to let everybody know it's going to be on the weekdays now. So we're just moving around trying to get everything figured out because life just takes us in those directions. But we are grateful for everybody joining us today. We hope you all have a wonderful week. Please be safe out there on the roadways, and with the winter weather coming along, it's kind of crazy right now with the weather. So everybody, please be safe out there while you're on these roadways, and we will talk to you next week.